Run.
Hello, welcome to Legends Lore Hauntings dot more. Nope.
No, leave it in because it's funnier.
All right, take two. Legends, Lore, Hauntings, and more creepy conversations with Shelley
And Polly and Boomer.
who's staring at himself in the mirror.
Because him's so handsome.
Hims is a handsome. Would you like to hear?
And now he's looking at the panda head. Like, is that what I look like?
Is that me? Would you like to hear some tiny tales of terror?
I would love to listen to Tiny Tales of Terror from the tiny... Okay, go on.
From the tiny ghosty. This one is called The Cabin.
Ooh.
All right. So a hiker decided to go on a hike by himself, something he was not very used to.
And you should not do that.
Yeah, you should never go
But
hiking by yourself, like, never. The whole day was normal. Trees and bushes engulfed his surroundings. He enjoyed being outdoors in the mountains. Nothing seemed strange to him. That was until he was making his way back to the car. He figured an 8-hour hike was good enough.
Holy crap! Who
Sure.
does that?
Shh, this dude.
Especially by yourself.
Right.
Only if I was lost.
Right.
Go on.
And then I'd still sit down.
Exactly. Then I'm like, that is enough of that. They can find me.
That's right. I'm putting up the flares. The sky was already getting dark, and he needed to get back fast.
Yeah.
What was odd was how much he didn't recognize the trail back,
Oh, crap.
and he began to panic.
Yeah.
Night had already taken over, and all he had was a flashlight and no clue on how to get back. He knew it was already too late and too dangerous to keep going through the perilous forest. He began to worry that he would have no shelter for the night, when almost luckily enough, he stumbled across a broken-down cabin. It was dark, and it seemed like no one had visited it in years, but he knew it was the only place where he could rest until daylight, especially since his flashlight was running out of battery.
Yikes.
He knocked on the door a few times, but no one answered. So he let himself in where, strangely enough, a perfect bed fitted for one person awaited him in the center.
Papa Bear.
He knew Papa Bear. He knew that it was the owner, he knew that if the owner came back, he could explain himself. He was sure that the owner wouldn't mind, or was even probably dead. So he went ahead and got himself comfortable in bed. As he tried to sleep, he couldn't ignore the collection of paintings around the room. Portraits of strange-looking people, all peering down at him, each wearing a smile that sent chills up his spine. Not too long after his exhaustion from the hike got the best of him, he was finally able to ignore the faces and go to sleep. The next morning, he got up early and he was shocked to see that there were no paintings around the room. Only windows.
Wow!
Scary, right? A mother's call.
Was that real?
No, these are all, I don't know, but these are all like just Reddit
okay.
stories. So, allegedly.
Like
Alleged.
Fire.
Creepypastas. Fire pit tales.
Yeah,
fire tales. Campfire stories.
That's it. That's what I'm looking
That's
for.
what we're going for.
Words are hard.
Words are very hard. Words in math. No.
Same.
A mother's
my
call.
addition.
My addition to drugs. Let's add this one and that one and maybe a perk here and there. Get an Adderall, perky. Let's add some booze. A mother's call. A daughter was in her room upstairs doing her homework when suddenly she heard her mother call.
You could have done that if you tried.
Perfect timing. She heard her mother call to come down for dinner. She jumped onto her feet and began making her way toward the stairs. But before she even took a step, hands grabbed her and pulled her into the laundry room beside the staircase. She panicked before she realized it was her mother, her real mother, eyes watery and bloodshot. "Don't go down there, honey. I heard it too." So the lady downstairs calling for dinner wasn't her mom. Whoa. Lame.
Give me a break. Yeah.
All right, do you want to hear who's under my bed?
Okay.
It might be my dog.
I was just going to say Boomer.
A father went to say goodnight to his 7-year-old son, very well knowing that if he didn't, his son would have trouble sleeping. It was a nightly routine between them. He entered the dimly lit room where his son waited under his blanket. With the first glance, while the father could tell that there was something unusual about his son tonight, but he couldn't put his finger on it. He looked the same, but he had a grin that drew from ear to ear. "You okay, buddy?" the father asked. The son nodded, still with the grin, before saying, "Daddy, check for monsters under my bed." The father chuckled a bit before getting on his knees to check, only to satisfy his son. There, under the bed, pale and afraid, was his son, his real son, whispering, "Daddy, there's someone on my bed." That's stupid or what?
About as dumb as the last one.
About as dumb as rocks.
About as dumb as the rocks in my head.
In under my bed. You want to hear about the red wristband?
Could I please? Somebody step on a cat? No, that was me singing.
That was
Go on.
me. That was my voice. A doctor was working at a hospital where patients were tagged with colored bands. Green for alive, red for deceased.
They couldn't tell the difference.
Right. Yeah. They couldn't. Because I guess it was full of pale people. The hospital was. No.
They're all vampires.
Alright, so anyway, one night the doctor was instructed to get a few supplies from the basement of the hospital, and so he headed to the lift. The lift doors opened, and there was a patient inside, minding her own business. Patients were allowed to roam around the hospital to stretch, especially those who had stayed a long time. The rule was just to be back in your room before 10. The doctor smiled at the patient before pressing the number for the basement. He found it unusual that the woman didn't have a button already pressed. He wondered if she was heading to the basement too. The lift finally reached the floor where the doors opened. In the distance, a man was limping toward the elevator, and in a panic, the doctor slammed the elevator button to close. It finally did close, and the lift began to ascend back up, the doctor's heart pounding. "Why did you do that? He was trying to use the lift," the woman stated, annoyed. "Didn't you see his wrist?" the doctor asked. "It was red. He died last night. I would know because I did his surgery." The woman then lifted her wrist. He saw red. She smiled, like this one.
I knew it. I knew it.
And I have one more. Called The White with Red. Don't ask.
I shan't.
A man just moved into an apartment, and he heads to the receptionist to get his keys. The receptionist gave him the key with a smile, but warns him not to disturb the door with no number on his floor. He wondered why, but he didn't bother to ask. He was too busy with his new apartment to even care. After he finished unpacking, then he began to get curious. He questioned why the receptionist would warn him of such things, and so he stepped out of his apartment to check the door with no number. He tried the doorknob first, but it was locked. So instead, he got onto his knees and he peeked through the keyhole. The apartment he was looking into was empty. His eyes scanned the whole place before stopping at a woman standing face against the wall in the corner. He noticed her pale skin and long black hair before stepping back, suddenly feeling perverted in a way for invading someone else's privacy. He brushed it off, assuming that she was someone that didn't want to be disturbed. The next day, he got more curious about the woman, and he eventually went back, straight away, getting onto his knees. He peeked through the keyhole and saw all red. Just red. He assumed that the pale woman must have caught him peeking the last time and covered the hole with something red. He left the door alone and instead went down to the receptionist to ask her a few questions. The receptionist sighed and asked, "You looked through the keyhole, didn't you?" He admitted to it, so she felt obliged to tell him the story. She told him that a couple used to live in that apartment a long time ago, but the husband went crazy and killed his wife. However, the couple wasn't a normal-looking couple. They had very pale skin, black hair, and red eyes. So that was it. It was the dead lady.
His eyes, their eyes looking back at him.
It was the dead lady in the apartment.
I know, but when he saw all red,
It was the
supposed
eyes.
to be the eyes looking back at him?
So, yeah. Mm-hmm. And those are my creepy, take them with a grain of salt, alleged tales.